Good morning. Well, it might not be morning when you're watching this, but it is for me. Unfortunately, the local newspaper shop wasn't open for sales, so I couldn't get another newspaper, but I am going to do a little bit of comparison. And today it's the Daily Telegraph and the Saturday papers. Okay, I'm Granniopteryx. And the big story here, of course, in the Telegraph, is the hints by Hunt that Jeremy Hunt has said that inheritance tax is unfair, and he vowed to support the middle classes with tax breaks. That doesn't mean he's going to abolish the inheritance tax. It means he's hinting at it because it's an election ploy. Now, I have made a short video about this on its own, which I'll put up, while I'm working on this, because this is going to take me, the newspaper always takes me a long time to sort out, to edit and all the rest of it. I've had lots of suggestions from people about cameras and software and all sorts of things. I'm going to have to do a serious revamp on that. Okay, well, now, what's the next big story? So it says here, Gove and Leadsom to stand down as exodus of MPs gathers pace. They're all running away. Now, Gove didn't need to run away, actually. I mean, he had an 18,000 vote majority. And even if it went down, it wouldn't go down completely. He'd still be pretty well assured of a seat. But he's leaving because he can see that the Conservative Party isn't the Conservative Party anymore. I'm not entirely sure, of course. I have no particular in on the Conservative Party, but I suspect that what happened was that everybody was saying have the election in November, and Sunak had decided, for reasons of his own, that he was going to hold a quick election in July and get it over with. And my guess, which might be entirely off the beam, my guess is that both Gove and Hunt are, they were trying to talk him out of this mad, harebrained idea. But it was one of those situations where you've got a puppet and you think you can operate the puppet, and then suddenly the puppet decides to take off on its own. Just a minute, that's reminded me of something. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I got it right. Kagemusha. Any of you seen that wonderful Japanese film called Kagemusha? Shadow Warrior. It's about a peasant who happens to resemble a general so closely that when the general dies, they dress the peasant up and pretend that the general is still there. It's a bit like the American government, actually, except what happens is that after a while the peasant decides that he really is the general, and he starts trying to make his own decisions, and that doesn't go so well. All right, well, I think possibly Gove said, no, you've got to have the elections in November or I'll resign, and Sunak said, okay then. And he called the snap election, and Gove resigned. At least that's my theory. I have no particular inside knowledge there. Okay, let's see what the second page has to say. Now this is interesting. Before I read the story about net zero, I'm going to show you a picture of a steam train. And apparently this is a newly built steam train. I wonder if it was built in Britain. The newly built Betton Grange steam locomotive will transport passengers for the first time this weekend at Cotswold Festival of Steam, Gloucestershire. How nice! Yeah, there's nothing quite like a steam train. All right, let's just get on with this article at the side here. It says, what's it say? Net zero push may lead to air pollution death rise. Ha! Now, apart from anything else, people are being killed quite often now by electric cars. And that's because they're so quiet. And even though, I think it's something like this, they were compelled to make a sound. So there's an artificial sound generator, which is about 56 decibels, so far as I can recall offhand. And that's about the sort of sound a fridge makes, which is no use at all, for goodness sake. I mean, we're hardly shouting over the sound of our fridge, are we? So people are just stepping out in front of them. I mean, they make less noise than a bicycle. Which reminds me, I want to tell any of you people who ride bikes, when you're coming up behind a horse, make as much noise as you can. Shout, hoot a horn, whatever. Or, you know, ring that little bell. Because just look at it this way. Horses can see almost to their bottoms, but not quite. Just not behind their bottoms. When something quiet sort of zips out from behind their bottoms, they tend to think it's a tiger. Okay, right. Report warns efforts to make buildings more eco-friendly may prove fatal if they're airtight. Net zero measures such as making homes better insulated could increase the number of deaths from air pollution, a report warns. The study by the World Heart Federation says attempts to make buildings more eco-friendly could prove deadly by making them airtight and increasing the build-up of air pollutants. Who'd have thought that? It's like that thing where they did a lot of window sealing and stuff and filling in of fireplaces in the 70s. And then a lot of houses got mould and damp and all the rest of it, because those houses were built for constant, you know, with the idea that there'd be a constant airflow through the chimneys and round the sides of the windows. Yeah, you'd think they could have learnt from that, wouldn't you? Oh no, people never learn. All right. Next, railway thieves threaten bank holiday travel turmoil. Bank holiday travel plans. Oh, here we are. It's here. While we're on the subject of railways, bank holiday travel plans have been thrown into chaos after thieves tried to steal. I thought they were going to be talking about pickpockets. No! Thieves tried to steal signalling cables from one of the country's biggest railway routes. There has been a big problem with thieves stealing cables from all sorts of things, traffic signals and railways and that sort of thing. National Rail inquiries said that the disruption would last till the end of the day. Oh, right. Trains from 5 separate companies are facing delays and cancellations after an attempted theft of signalling cables. So they must have started and then they got caught or couldn't do it. Which reminds me of a story there was years ago, and it's become something of a meme now, when a train was late, or several trains were late, and the excuse of the railway company was there were leaves on the line. Now they can use the excuse there are thieves on the line. Okay, and right underneath that, here, oh, sorry. A child contracted Weils disease after swimming in a river. Oh, yeah, that's all over the place. I was in Cambridge once, and we were punting on the river there, on the Cam, and some guy of olive complexion, he could have been Greek or Turkish or something along those lines, who either did not understand English or pretended not to, jumped out of his boat, you know, while and started swimming around. And I tried to shout to him that there's Weils disease in that river, but he affected not to understand me. So I don't know what happened to him. Right. And then here, sepsis is much in the news now after a member of parliament lost all 4 of his lower limbs to sepsis. And a 9-year-old boy died from sepsis, it said here, after NHS failure of care. Let's see if it really was. The NHS could have saved the life of a 9-year-old boy who died from sepsis after he was misdiagnosed, the coroner's ruled. He was sent home from Grange Hospital in Cumbran in December 22 after being diagnosed with flu and given a leaflet with advice for coughs and colds. And Caroline Saunders, the Gwent coroner, recorded a narrative conclusion saying there's been a gross failure of basic care. Oh, the inquest had examined whether Dylan's appendicitis, which led to sepsis, could or should have been picked up earlier. Ah, so the poor kid was really under siege, wasn't he? By the way, something that you Americans might not be aware of. Do you know what a coroner is? Yeah, I know it's the guy who judges, you know, about deaths and things like that. But it means the crown, the person who represents the crown in this situation. You may have thought you got rid of the Brits, but you haven't really. We're still there in all your legal systems. Okay, right, there's an article here, slimmed down monarchy, it says here, theory rumbled. Oh, by the way, I forgot, and I got the pages up here. You remember that article I said about inheritance tax, which was the big story? Here, hang on a minute, I'll just show you the headline again. Okay, there, which, of course, the Daily Telegraph, being a paper that supports the Conservative Party, a lot of the time, that's their headline, because they're trying to tempt the middle classes into actually voting. It's not that the middle classes are going to go out and vote Labour, it's that they're just going to stay home and have a barbecue. It's July after all, there might be some sun. So they're trying to get them to come out and vote. Well, I looked in the Guardian. So here's the Guardian headlines, and they have a picture of Rishi Sunak looking shifty, and they're saying, here we are. He just disappeared for a day, having made that announcement. And the story. So they're saying, oh, this actually reminds me of that scene in Othello where Iago is implying that Desdemona might be messing around with Claudio, and he doesn't say that. He says something like, you know, oh, Claudio's around here, and then he grabs Othello and he says, oh, beware, my lord, of the green of jealousy. It is the green-eyed monster that mocks the meat it feeds on. Something like, I think I got that more or less right. So here in the Guardian, they don't say Rishi Sunak is, you know, has given up. They just say that he denies he's taking a day off before the election. Okay, right. Let's carry on. So there's a royal page here. First of all, slimmed down monarchy theory rumbled. Yep. And what does it say here? William's cousins rally to the cause as 8,000 guests treated to small talk and laughter at garden party. Almost all of the 8,000 guests at this week's Buckingham Palace garden party. Do you know what? They didn't invite me. Well, must have got lost in the post. 8,000 guests at a garden party received their invitations in the post. 5 of them got a WhatsApp from their cousin, the Prince of Wales, who thought it might be nice to include them. And their arrival lifted what could have been a rather different occasion for the Prince, hosting the party on behalf of his father and without his wife. Well, what's all this about? Standing for God Save the King, alone, with the working Duke and Duchess of Gloucester standing a little behind him. The Prince could have cut rather a lonely figure without the Princess, who is at home, recovering from illness. Instead, with a rugby-playing cousin-in-law to hand, William led the younger royals in a cheery, photo-friendly tour de force through the gardens. The slimmed-down monarchy, this was not. Well, that's a bit of a non-story, isn't it? Further on here it says, rumbling for years, the slimmed-down policy has long been attributed to a Prince Charles who was conscious of the cost of what seemed at the time to be an ever-expanding royal family. Not quite so much now. They all seem to be peeling off in different directions. The departure of the Sussexes, as is well known, changed everything. Since the King and Princess of Wales have taken time away for cancer treatment and chemotherapy, so the concerns over the slimmed-down monarchy theory have rumbled. Okay, insiders reject the idea that well, that's a non-story. Okay, and then here, push to change the inheritance laws. The Duke of Westminster's forthcoming wedding has prompted fresh calls to change the law preventing firstborn daughters inheriting their family's titles. This whole thing came from the fact that in earlier times a king was supposed to go out fighting, so of course you're going to choose the most capable of sitting on a horse and swinging a sword. And so girls got rather pushed to the side. They were more marriage alliance material, weren't they? So they're now thinking about changing it so that firstborn of any sex would be the inheritor. Of course, I wonder legally what would happen if there was a male heir to a title who then decided to change sex and become a female. Would he then retain his title, or would he, as is often the case, have to go down a rank? Because when a woman inherits a father's time, not that much up on heraldry, but I think when a woman inherits her father's title, it's down a rank. Or would he have to cede the title to his younger brother? Interesting thought. It might be a good idea to just make it firstborn of whatever sex. It's a lot less complicated. Right, what's going on? Right, now look at this. You see, hey, look at that headline there. 78 standing down. Record 78 Tories standing down at election. They've just given up. And I'm not surprised. They've made such a cock-up of everything. The number of Tory MPs standing down at the general election has surpassed the Conservative Party record set in 1997, when Labour won a landslide under Sir Tony Blair. You've no idea how much it hurts me to use Sir next to the name of that man. Before Michael Gove and Andrea Leadsom's announcement, Sir David Evernett said he'd not seek re-election, taking the number of Tories stepping down to 76. It comes after Greg Clark, the former Cabinet Minister, Craig McKinley, Tory MP for South Thanet. Greg Craig McKinley I could understand. He's the MP who lost all 4 of his libs. Fortunately, his wife was very assertive with the doctors. They wanted to remove his arms and legs from just around the shoulder and hips, and she fought them to have them take his arms and legs below the elbow and knee, so that gave him a lot more mobility. But he said he couldn't do an election campaign and the physiotherapy he needs to get to work with the prosthetics. So yeah, I can understand him stepping down. That's an unfortunate expression, isn't it? Grant Shapps was quick to insist there was nothing unusual about the scale of the Tory exodus ahead of the general election. Well, there's plenty unusual, because they don't, the various Conservative associations don't have people in place, most of them. They have to really hurry up and find, and the prospective MPs will have to familiarise themselves and run an election campaign. The whole thing is a complete cock-up. Okay. Now, the BBC says we will make mistakes in coverage. All right, they're covering themselves already. It's this little article down here. And that reminds me of something else, but I'll get to that in a minute. The BBC will make mistakes in its general election coverage, its head of news has announced in a preemptive statement. A lot of the mistakes, though, aren't really mistakes, are they? Anyway, let's carry on. Miss Turnus, Deborah Turnus, chief executive of BBC News, attempted to get ahead of the corporation's critics by declaring that errors were inevitable. Miss Turnus added that the BBC Verify unit, that's like the Ministry of Truth, the Verify unit, which has itself come under scrutiny over its fact-checking, will be deployed during the election campaign. Oh, well, that's it then. The other day, a cinema in East Finchley, which is a suburb of North London, the Phoenix Cinema, which I think is supposed to be the oldest cinema in continuous use in the United Kingdom, if not in the world. It goes for a lot of arty films and that sort of thing. There was a film, I don't quite know what the film was, but it was about the October the 7th massacre in Israel. And now, I don't know which came first here, the chicken or the egg, but a group of pro-Hamas rabble, that's all I want to call them, turned up outside the cinema and started spray painting it with red paint and that sort of behaviour. It's an area that has a lot of Jews in it, and also some people from local Christian churches. I don't know whether they came there to preempt because they'd found out about this flash mob turning up, or whether the flash mob turned up and then the Jews and the Christian supporters came. I don't know, but there was a clash, and it turned out there were more Jews and Christians there than the Hamas flash mob, and they pushed them out, back into the underground where they belonged. It's sort of ironic that the Hamas mob ended up being shoved down into a tunnel, isn't it? But that's one thing we should be celebrating, because it means that local Jews aren't simply, hiding themselves anymore. And there should be more of that sort of thing, which may prompt the local governments to act a bit better in regard of regulating these demonstrations. But the BBC reported it as a crowd of Jews interrupting a Palestinian vigil in East Finchley. A vigil.
Pro-Israel protesters celebrated tonight after chasing away pro-Palestinian supporters who were holding a vigil outside the Phoenix Cinema in East Finchley. The vigil was in protest at a film about the October 7th attacks.
When they were rioting, holding up threatening posters and spray painting the Phoenix Cinema, as I said, an old and, listed building. It was a vigil. And the nasty Jews interrupted that. That was BBC reporting. Just shocking. I mean, unspeakable. All right, more coffee. I wonder if I can make this coffee last the whole newspaper. All right. Right, there's a whole page here. Here's Jeremy Hunt looking friendly in front of an old telephone box. And no, those aren't real swans there, but it's a rather rural and pretty picture of an England that scarcely exists anymore. Oh, now what's this? Surprise Rwanda flight may get off the ground before the election. So people have been saying, Sunak call the election because the Rwanda thing is not going to work. So he wants to get the election done, and he'll say, well, we can't do Rwanda flights, because of the election. Rishi Sunak could get a surprise Rwanda deportation flight off the ground before the election on July the 4th. Well, that'll be a bit of a fanfare boost for his election, won't it? The Home Office is still working to a timetable that could see the first flight take off as early as June the 24th. Well, if you watch my other videos, what I think of that. And it's not much, because, how many people can you get on a plane? A couple of hundred? And the illegal migrants are coming by the thousands. All right, you'd have to have squadrons of planes to take them to Rwanda. Now, as well as sorry, I had to cut that because I was, lots of paper crackling. So the Telegraph, doing its best for the Conservative Party, starts off with the hint that inheritance tax will be abolished, which it will not be. And the second thing is private schools will be forced to close as Labour vows tax raid before the new term. So here they've done a double page spread on that. There's the first page, and there's the second page. And now, Starmer isn't averse to doing a bit of hinting of his own. Sir Keir Starmer sowed confusion. Sorry, I want to show you the headline first. There. Policy to raise or scrap tuition fees, it says here, sows confusion among the left. Sir Keir Starmer sowed confusion over Labour's policy on university tuition fees after suggesting on the same day that the party could either scrap or raise them. That's good. That's what you call post-truth, isn't it? And then, as a friend of mine, a colleague of mine anyway, used to call this the daily Tory graph. So there's a thing here, it says, Shifty Starmer struggles under intense scrutiny of morning radio. Mishal Hussain, the Today host, followed the simple but shrewd policy of listing things Sir Keir stood for at the last election and asking whether he still believed in them. scrapping university tuition fees. Please let me complete, spluttered Sir Keir after his allocated minute or so of prevaricating. Right. The fact is, they're all going to promise stuff and they're not going to hold on to any of their promises, except we can be sure of one thing. If it's the Conservatives, they're going to make a mess of things. And if it's the Labour Party, they're going to make a mess of things times 10. All right. And here, I believe that they've been talking about French-style union organisation. So here, there's warning: French-style union laws will cost 41 billion a year, say Tories. Okay, well, the Telegraph's certainly pulling out the stops here, isn't it? Here's an article. Oh, there we are. About Ozempick. Weight loss drug reduces risk of heart attack and kidney disease. I think that's probably got more to do with you lose the weight, you're less likely to have heart attacks or kidney disease. Ozempick found to have profound clinical impact on common diseases that could help cut NHS bill. Now, yeah, okay, so I didn't get that to start with. Yeah, give people this, and then they'll cut the drain on the NHS. The best thing, I don't know what can be wrong with Ozempick. I'm quite sure that things can be wrong with it, but it doesn't let you eat everything you want and then reduce your weight. What it does is it stops you wanting to eat in the first place. So this is, if everybody's on Ozempick, it means there's a lot of people, it means that a lot of fast food businesses are going to go out of business. And those sorts of things, the pizza places and everything, they're going to be, I suppose the end result will be they'll sell smaller portions for more money. And because people don't want to eat that much, it'll be okay with them. But they are going to go out of business. Somebody once remarked that nobody could have predicted when cars were invented the effect it would have on the courting habits of teenagers. And yeah, well, I'm going to predict that if enough people are on Ozempick, it's going to end up a human right to get your Ozempick injections, so you're slim, and a lot of fashion is going to change because there are going to be a lot more thin people picking up on fashion. I mean, I'm not exactly thin, but I am quite small, and I know when I get a lot of my stuff from charity shops, and I get a lot of really good stuff because I go to the size 8 end of the rack, and hardly anyone else, there's not that many people who are size 8, so it's quite, I get some really nice stuff, sometimes, very high-end stuff. Well, that's going to scupper things for me, isn't it? Now, here you are. Oh, the police doing their usual common sense policing. Here we have police, what's it say? Police warn woman for saying that she would wring vandals' necks. I'm sorry I keep banging the microphone. So what happened was these vandals kept going for her garden gate, and she had to spend £500 at one point to replace it. So she chased them and then shouted that she'd wring their necks. Now, the woman was 70, and I don't know how old these kids were, they're 16 or 17 or whatever, strapping lads. The fact that she could, the possibility that she could even get close enough to them to wring their necks is Yeah, well, you work out the odds. And she just shouts. So when the police visited her home after she made the complaint, she was warned about making threats by the police. Let's just take a minute to think of that. The police went round to a woman who is being victimised by a gang of mini thugs. She shouts that she's going to wring their necks and they tell her off. You know, and I say you can't rely on the government, you can't rely on the police. What's happened to civilised society? Don't tell me. Okay, I want to point out something here. This is why I like the Telegraph. Here, Letby, the story about Lucy Letby, who has been convicted of killing neonatals, premature babies. And it says here, Letby has been refused permission for appeal over her baby killer convictions. And I want to show you the headline on that in the Independent, if I can find it again. Okay, yeah, here we are. This is the Independent. Child killer Lucy Letby loses bid to appeal her convictions. And this is so typical of the left papers. They have her as child killer Lucy Letby. The Telegraph at least gives her the dignity of referring to her by her name, and the fact that she has been convicted of a crime or several crimes, but they don't actually make her existence as a murderer. How do I put this? Yeah, that's all I can say. They don't frame her entire existence as a child killer. She is Lucy Letby, who has been convicted of killing children. And I want to tell you, there is some doubt still about that conviction. And the National Health Service is... I'm going to do a video about the National Health Service clamping down on the mistakes, or the managers clamping down on the mistakes they make. And it is, as far as I'm concerned, entirely possible that Letby has been wrongly convicted. But she has been convicted, and she is in jail because that's the way the law works. It might be right, it might be wrong. We don't know. That's what the trial says, and we have to go with that. However, you don't do this. Child serial killer Lucy Letby, before you even get to her as a person, you are given her as a cipher. And that is very typical of newspapers like the Independent, because they think in ciphers, in pigeonholes all the time, even on something like this. All right, next page. Right, director creates database of fake AI actors to use as extras. A film director has created a database of 50,000 artificial intelligence actors that can be used as extras. I mean, they have done this before. You see a lot of crowd scenes now, and they are crowd scenes of generated images. But this company, AIO Studios, the company of Polish director Patryk Wega, has created the images of realistic digital actors with a range of ages, races, genders, hairstyles, costumes and styles of movement. Yeah, well, and then he says, I made 50,000 human models that do not exist in reality, so I don't have a problem with rights. I mean, a lot of money is spent on extras in the filmmaking world, and pretty soon that's all going to go. The AI extras all have modern dress and hairstyles, but the company plans to expand the database into other eras, allowing them to be used in period films. Right, well, I wonder how that's going to go. Yeah, and then there's another article here. Block children from social media under the age of 16. Children should be barred from social media until the age of 18, and all-party committee of MPs has recommended. It's a great idea. Right. That's going to go well, isn't it? What are they going to do? Arrest kids when you see them fiddling with their phones on the street? So here, this is Paula Vennells again. And it says here, Vennells was booed over boring Horizon show. Former chief executive. This is a woman who has no sense of proportion whatsoever, and she was, as I keep telling people, Justin Welby, the Archbishop of Canterbury, strongly recommended her as the Bishop of London. She is an ordained minister. Can you imagine going to this ordained minister for any sort of spiritual advice? Former chief executive faced furious reaction to an email she sent about a TV programme on the post office scandal. Paula Vennells was booed as the post office inquiry heard that she was more bored than outraged after watching a programme featuring Horizon victims. I mean, it is just astonishing. First of all, she should know about emails by now. She should know how dangerous they can be. And secondly, to actually come out with something, well, yeah, maybe. I was about to say, at least she's honest. But she's not even honest, because she actually sat in front of a committee of members of Parliament and told them that Horizon was absolutely 100% ironclad accurate. She actually said that when she knew there was a problem. So she's a liar as well. So I'm not going to say that she's rare moment of honesty. I don't know. Right. Gosh, there's a lot of news now. I wonder how long I've been reading this. It says here, Putin has achieved his aim and wants a ceasefire now. I don't think the Ukraine are going to be so happy about that. It says here, Ukraine, on the same page, Ukraine begins counterattack after stopping Kharkiv invasion. And there's also news here that a pottery goat said to have been made by the king when an undergraduate is up for auction. I've seen a picture of it. And maybe I'll try and find a picture of it. It's not bad, you know. The king isn't a bad artist at all. I mean, he's not a huge genius, but he's quite artistically talented. All right. Oh, look at this. Now, there's an unusual stained glass window, isn't it? What's this all about? Carlo Acutis died of leukemia in 2006, aged 15, but has already been beatified by the Catholic Church. Oh, what a sad story. If you step inside the Roman Catholic Church of St. Oldham in Malmesbury, Wiltshire, there's a stained glass window of a type we've all seen countless times. It depicts a medieval bishop, crozier in hand, and a mitre on his head. But turn away from this image of St Adelm and you'll spot a very different character in another stained glass window. This one is of a young teenage boy with a modern watch on his wrist and a mobile phone attached to his rucksack. This is Carlo Acutis, born in London in 1991, the boy nicknamed God's influencer and the millennial saint, a teenager who loved computers and loved God even more. You know, I don't think I'm going to be able to read this without crying, so I'm not going to. You'll have to look up the rest on the internet. But it's a beautiful memorial for him anyway, isn't it? A pretty window. And you don't see many of those. Well, I've never seen anything like it. Okay. Oh, the business section. Is there anything here? There's sometimes something. Oh, the crossword. I've got to get. Well, no, that's it. Right. Well, that is the end of the Telegraph for Saturday, the 25th of May. Till next time. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Granniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.